You look back at the Brexit referendum vote, the way markets reacted then, you might see a lot of investors here swallowing hard, wondering what's going to happen. Why should they not be as worried?
Exactly, because as history shows us, there's really no connection between the day after the elections move and what actually happens in the next year. So, at the risk of kind of sounding like you're very run-of-the-mill, long-term portfolio manager or strategist that are always bullish.
Are you going to tell us to diversify?
Right, exactly. You always talk to these guys and it's always stay bullish. Short-term moves, stick around. But it's actually very true. And there's a certain amount of importance on this because even though talking about one day as a precedent for a long-term move sounds ridiculous, this is what people trade on, and there are a lot of folks out there that are going to look at this and try and project it out. We see it all the time with the month of January. We talk about the January effect with small caps or stocks doing well. People think, well, if we did poorly in January, we're going to do poorly the rest of the year. We talk about the Santa Claus rally in December. There's all these sort of idiosyncratic kind of adages that appear in the market from time to time, and it shows that people do pay attention to very short-term moves, and they extrapolate on what they could mean, and that's oftentimes a very, flawed process.
What's volume like these days, Oliver? Because I know in the Treasury market overnight, it was 1.5 times the average, but what about stocks?
So the volume situation is pretty interesting. Basically what you've seen is a fair amount of swinging back and forth within the market. Volumes did tick up quite a bit. It was actually a little bit lower. It's been very dependent on when we get these big announcements. Everybody's keyed into politics right now. So volume has been a little bit higher. Then it slows down when there's sort of a dearth of information. People are very much waiting and watching every little thing that comes out on headlines, right? Where you see this morning, we come in and stocks are up around the world and it's just this very risk-on atmosphere. I think it brings into question how much of a relief rally there's going to be in the market if Clinton does win as expected, where the Bloomberg Politics polls are out this morning and investors adding almost 2% to S&P today. It does seem that that's sort of the consensus trade. It does make you wonder though how much more room there is to bounce as a result of that if it's already the consensus move.
Okay, so if that's in line with what the polling is showing, and again, even that Bloomberg Politics poll is showing just a margin of error difference there between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. What happens if she loses, if Donald Trump wins? To what degree has the markets priced in a Clinton victory?
It's very hard to say. There are people that would wager. You have to try and think about what's going to happen in the market based on what happened in instances in which there are these very clear sort of market moves. For example, Sunday night, obviously today we've now got this 2% move. The first time we went back and looked at a debate in which Trump sort of started losing some ground, you watched futures move, and you can kind of try and project that out, but there's not a lot of mathematical grounding to say, oh, we moved 2% today. If Trump loses or if Trump wins, we're going to move X percent. It just doesn't really work like that. So it's very hard to know. You can try and prognosticate on what his economic policies are going to be, how that's going to affect the economy. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's probably going to be some red on the screen. Whether or not it boils down to sectors over the intermediate to longer term, I think is a very reasonable thing to suspect. We've done studies looking at correlations on what sectors should gain. It seems to be the financials and the healthcare, as well as some of these industrial companies, if he's going to actually have the kind of fiscal spending. But I think in the short term, it's just going to be a pretty across-the-board kind of selling without nobody's going to be saying, oh, Trump wins, let's go buy this, but sell everything else now. It's just probably going to be a lot of red.